Hey, what's up you guys? So I'm about to start sewing the Copen pattern from Made to Sew. As you can see, I have already printed and cut out the pattern and also cut out all of my fabric. So I'm going to be making the top instead of the dress. I'll probably make the dress at a later point in time, but today I'm going to be making the top. Here are all my pieces. Sleeve, front, back. Alright, so the fabric that I'm using is actually an old bed sheet that has gotten kind of like worn out. And I'm doing that because I'm pretty new to sewing and I kind of want to start practicing my patterns more if I can, just to kind of master the basics, like maintaining my seam allowance and just, you know, being as organized as I can with it, so that when it comes to using the actual fabric, I'm not, you know, making as many mistakes, and I kind of have a game plan going into it. So that's what I'm going to start doing. I think it's called doing a toile. I think that's the proper term, but I just ordered a bunch of muslin off of Etsy, so that'll be good. But what I'm going to do now is going through with my invisible disappearing ink, that's probably backwards, pen, and I'm gonna mark the notches in all of these patterns. That's also something that I'm trying to get better at because I always forget to do that. So I'm gonna go through and do that now. And I think I've watched the video on their YouTube, and I'll link that below. I'll link their website where you can get this pattern. This is actually a free pattern, the Copen, and they have great instructions, and the first thing that the instructions say to do is to stabilize the neckline. I think that's called a stay stitch. That's probably wrong, but it's to help the fabric not like stretch as much around like certain parts. So like the neckline is one of those places. So I'm gonna mark the notches and then I'm gonna do the stay stitching. Yeah, that's what it's called. Okay. When I measured myself, I have like my bust, waist, and hip measurements, and I always size up rather than try to like squeeze into something. And I feel like sizing is one of those tricky things when you're using patterns, because I've sent some stuff that, like, based on the measurements should fit, but it's always like too big. I don't know, I think that's something that you just kind of master with experience. So I'm using it's a size that's pretty close to my measurements, so hopefully this will turn out well, and I think by the looks of it will. So yeah. Alright, I think I'm done with marking the notches, so let's go over and do the stay stitch. Okay, so I went ahead and did the stay stitching off camera just because it was a little bit easier, but the seam allowance for this garment is 5/8 of an inch, which I think is pretty standard because I've seen that a lot. And so they say to do the stay stitch, you know, like inside the seam allowance. So they say to do it at 1/2 an inch. So that's what I did, and I'm doing like I had this navy thread on my sewing machine anyway, so I'm just not really caring what color it is. And it's kind of nice to use a contrasting color like this so you can kind of see all the stitching. So this is what it looks like. It kind of helps with the stretch. I'm still kind of learning about like stitch lengths and tension and all of that, so I see some like loops in my threading or my stitching. Anyway, so I have, this is the front, one of the back pieces, and the other back piece. So now, the pattern calls to cut interfacing for the facing pieces, but I'm not going to waste interfacing on this since it's just like a mock-up, so I'm going to skip that part. And it says you can also do bias tape instead of the stay stitch, but I don't have any bias tape and I've never worked with that. It's definitely something that I want to learn how to do, but today's not that day. So let's see. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so now it has, well, I need to mark the rest of my darts, but now it's having us do the bust darts. So on the front, have that. So I need my pattern. Looks good. the other side. Alright, so I'm back from sewing my darts and then ironing them. So this is the front. You can see I have the two French darts and the contour darts. See that? And I've pressed them. Sliding is horrible. And then the back pieces. The contour dart. And this. They look pretty good. I'm very happy with them. So the next step in the tutorial, or the made to sew tutorial, is to finish the raw edges. And I do not have a serger, so I think I'm going to use this to practice the zigzag stitches. So I'm going to do that, and they say to do it on the shoulder seams, for the back, the shoulder seams, and the, what did you say, the center back, and the side seams. So all three of the sides, and then on the front, the shoulder seams and the side seams. And when you're going over here with this dart, you want to start at the top and just go down over it. So I'm gonna go do that, and I'll be right back. All right, so I moved the camera over here, so hopefully it's a little bit better lighting. I did my zigzag stitches. I think they turned out pretty well. I haven't ever used a zigzag stitch to finish a raw edge before, so I'm pretty happy with it. I don't have a serger, like I said earlier, but it looks pretty good. Obviously room for improvement, but the more practice I get, the better it will be. So did all that. And my side pieces, or my back pieces, excuse me. That. So the next step is to sew the seams. So right sides together. Alright, just got back with the sewing machine, and I'm pretty proud of my stitch. I tried to be as cognizant as I could of the seam allowance, and I think I did a pretty good job. I don't say so myself. So I'm going to take this over to my ironing board and press it flat. We're back. There's nothing more satisfying than flat seam allowances. Alright, I'm gonna see what's next and I will be back. Alright, so the next steps are to sew at the shoulder seams. So, shoulder seams, and to prepare the sleeve. Right here. Ow. Ow. That hurt. So I have mine attached. Do that. Alright, so I just finished sewing my facing together, and it also called, or the directions also said to, hold on, oh, excuse me, to go ahead and like hem the edge, like the outside edge of this. So I went ahead and did that. It doesn't look best. It doesn't look the best because hemming is one of those things that I'm not great at, so I need more practice with that, but I definitely took the opportunity to do this, and it does make it nicer and, you know, kind of look a little bit more professional. But the next step, I think, is adding in the zipper, and the instructions say to go ahead and, okay, so I've inserted my zipper, and it's not as nice as an invisible zipper, but okay, so I'm back. I went ahead and changed clothes, but so I did my, oh, I should probably, well, I don't need to iron them. I did my hems, and I did my basting stitch, and everything worked out perfectly. I used a 4mm length, and I only did one row. So, hoping that's good enough. And see, it's starting to bunch up. Okay, so this, I switched from my camera because the battery died, but I pinned this sleeve onto the bodice. So the bodice is inside out and the sleeve is right side out. So there's right sides together. It's kind of confusing, but first you want to match the shoulder seams with the notch that we made to that purple. They're a little off, but whatever. And then I matched the side seams, and then this notch I'd put in the wrong place on the sleeve, but well, first I found the double notch because it was easier to do. The double notch is the back of the sleeve. So I matched them and pinned it, and then pinned here, and then kind of did the same thing on the front side. So I'm gonna do this with the others. All right, so it looks like the sleeve came out pretty well. I'm probably gonna try it on. There was a little bit of puckering. Kind of ran out of, like, it was too bunched, so yeah, I kind of ran into some puckering, but I made sure it was at the armpit and not at the shoulder, so it's less noticeable. But this is why I practice. Okay, so I think this one turned out worse, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, I've pinned the facing, so I'm gonna go sew this. Be right back. Okay, so just stitched it. Flip it over, see how it looks. Actually, I should flip this part over. There's some trim. Okay, so here is what it's looking like. I'm 5'9", so it's a little short on my body. So I think when I make it for real, I'm definitely gonna lengthen it. Aneka has a video on like adjusting or like lengthening or shortening patterns, so I'll definitely watch that. I'll probably lengthen the sleeves too. These just look kind of goofy because I feel like they're a little bit too short. But all in all, the fit is nice, I think. There are a couple, like, where I messed up here on the sleeve. That is pulling a little bit. Same one here on this side. There's a little bit of that going on. I messed up on, I think, this side for the darts. One of them came up too far. The shoulder areas feels pretty good. It's maybe a little bit tight. I don't like it, but that's okay. But I mean, it looks pretty good. Like I said, I think lengthening it will make it look a little bit better on my body. She also has a video on converting this neckline into a V-neck, and so I'm probably gonna do a toile on that and play around with short sleeves instead of the 3/4 length sleeves. So yeah, I'm excited. I will keep you guys posted. Thanks for watching.